Hello everyone, I want to do this quick video on Hadar, the Hadar star seeds. And when I went into the Akashic to get this information, I normally don't get information like maybe some other people might get the information. So this is going to be a little different. When I went into the Akashic to pull this information, I did it for a beautiful soul that wanted to know her soul's origins. And it came out that her first origin is in Hadar, and her second origin that is complementary of Hadar is in the Polaris. So I want to focus today on Hadar and Polaris. The Hadar constellation, there are other planets nearby that have different characteristics like reptilian, fairies, elementals, and the ones that were the Hadarians. This is like where the constellation where the cosmic heart is known to come from. This is the place where people worked on their heart energy center, so basically the heart chakra. This is the Hadar is in the Beta Centauri. It is different than the Alpha Centauri, just to be clear. The Hadars had a lot of beauty, a lot of love, beauty in the air. Like the whole planet was really to harness the energy of love, of unity consciousness through love. Therefore, these people had is a very bright star, and they show me the star. They gave me the name, like the brightest star, they said. And I think it was the brightest star, and it is still, but it was known as the brightest star also because of what it represents. But they also show me tears, beauty, chocolate, a violin. What else did they show me? Flowers, white flowers. And I thought that was really interesting because some of these things were metaphors for what the Hadarians represent and went through. We know, well, they show me, and I'm sure online you're going to find more information about the Hadars, the Hadarians. They went through a very dark phase, but before we get there, let me just say that they lived in harmony. They understood the frequency of beauty, harmony, love, unity consciousness. The violin that they show me, as you know, the violin represents harmony. So it makes sense that they show me the violin, and a lot of people playing the violin because it's the frequency of harmony. The chocolate, I believe, represents the sweetness of this frequency. And then the tears, the beauty, obviously, because when you work from this heart space, everything becomes beautiful. Everything becomes just so beautiful and harmonious that you can flow with anything, right? But then comes the tears, and the tears represent the fact that the Hadarians were so open, were so loving and kind that they accepted other beings from the nearby star system to come through. And when they came through, some of those beings didn't have the best intentions in mind. And because of that, they were tricked by dark forces, and eventually they had to leave their place of their home. What I was showing is a force field, almost like a protected layer that was broken by the dark forces. There was a lot of magic in the Hadar planet, because the planet nearby the Hadar, obviously the star is not a planet, but there was a lot of magic in the air, because when you work from the higher space, is easy for you to flow with everything. So there was magic in the air, but that magic was gone. It was infiltrated when the dark forces came in, and the Hadarians didn't have any choice but to leave their home. So they can no longer go back home. That's why a lot of Hadarians are very homesick. I just have to say that the Hadarians they seem to have been in a fifth density, in a fifth dimensional dimension, but their frequency was vibrating at a higher, their heart space was vibrating at a higher even frequency. So that it is interesting to me, because if it seems that even though they were in the fifth density, their heart space they probably went through several layers of density in order to attract so much. It's not knowledge, it's more unity consciousness. And because of this, other beings throughout the cosmos knew about this, especially those that were nearby, the reptilian, the fairies, the elementals. Some of these things didn't have the best in mind. I saw a little man. He looked tiny, like a little fairy, but he was a male with some humanoid features, but at the same time with a little bit look like an evil look in his face. And that freaked me out, honestly, because I didn't expect something so small to be so evil looking. And it wasn't because he was ugly, it was because of the way that he looked like a trickster. But I also saw a lot of shape-shifting abilities. So definitely the beings that came through had shape-shifting abilities that the Hadarians didn't expect to have to deal with. So it was a very protective place until the dark forces came through and destroyed the field that protected them and that kept them safe. So they did have to leave. The Hadarians, their personality, they're very loving, giving, and kind. They bring the energies of unconditional love, community, togetherness. They're very good at working with others and enjoy the company of others. They're almost like childlike attitude sometimes. They like to flow. They like to be creative. They tend to be very empathic in if they're awakened to those abilities, so they don't feel out of place, right? But on the other side, they do have a group lesson, and those that were enslaved, because the reptilians did manage to enslave some of the Hadarians. Those that were enslaved that are free now and that are here tend to feel like they cannot see their own power. They cannot step into their own power. They are fearful and they're prone to a lot of phobias. Sometimes it's just irrational sometimes, the fear of being taken advantage of and worrying all the time. And also feeling very aloof, different, alone, lonely. They have a hard time making friends, especially the ones that were enslaved Handarians, because a lot of them were able to leave quickly, but some of them they did get trapped. They were haunted and they were trapped by the dark forces. They don't like large organizations and government for the obvious reasons. And they feel like this planet here can be really harsh. They give unconditional love, but they don't always, because of that, they don't always attract the best people. They tend to attract sometimes people that tend to take advantage of them. And it's almost like a cycle, like they repeat it over and over sometimes until they learn the lesson. Most of their Herdarians tend to be really good in healing, but in an indirect way. They support, they nurture, they support others in their healings, but they're not the ones that directly doing the healing most of the time. This is not obviously 100%. They do tend to be a lot of they tend to be humanitarians, people that like to work for, like, unite people and get them to do things almost for the benefit of the planet. They are very empathic, but they have to awaken themselves to that ability, or those abilities. A lot of them might have more than one. They are patient and tolerant, but again, sometimes that can be a little problematic if they don't know how to balance those energies. And I think that's all I have for the Hadarians. And I'm going to leave, well, actually, no, let me do the Polarians too, because I thought that it was very interesting that the Polarians, I saw an interesting situation going on with the Polarians, and I saw it's also a triple star system, just like Hadar, but in the Polaris, I noticed that there were two different type of beings. Some of these beings were sure, very much into, I'm going to give you both. So some of these people were sure, very much into nature. They love working with their planet elements. They had a lot of water. They had a lot of, they like to cultivate their land. They worked in communities, in small villages throughout the planet. And everything was very peaceful, very harmonious, because they worked in group and they worked as a unit. On the other side, on the other planet, there were beings that were different, very, very sterile environment. And they were very much into science, government, and technology. So I saw very large buildings, different beings. Even though it was harmonious, it was completely different than the other people that were very much into the planet elements and being one with the planet, being one with the community, feeling like a family unit in the village, not just with the family, but with the entire village. They would be very good at making sure that everybody had the same things. On the other side, the other beings were more into learning how to create technology, how to advance scientifically, how to put systems in place so they can actually take their prototypes that they had and take it to other places where eventually they were going to go and help other planets to build to continue their development. But then I also saw a combination of both coming into a third planet. So let's call it Polaris A and Polaris AB. And now the third group is Polaris B, where Polaris A, Polaris B combine. And because it made it seem like the Polaris A wanted to experience the people that were very much into the planet's elementals, cultivating unity consciousness, community. They also wanted to explore, and they could go explore and come back eventually. And the same thing with the Polaris AB. They wanted to see what was the other planet all about, what were the other peoples all about, why did they think differently. So it was almost like merging the two. Eventually, people, almost like when people come to the United States or to the United Kingdom, people from everywhere from the planet come to these places and they merge. Asians merging with Africans, white with Latinos, or however the combination is. Well, these people seem to have created a merging of the two and actually decided to go into a third planet where they could be bringing both energies into one. So these people tend to be actually really interesting because the Polarians, it's interesting because the Polarians, they're very loyal, very dependable. You can count on them. They're very consistent. They have long-lasting relationships. They're able to unite groups behind a common cause. They bring energy of oneness and unity and democratic and inclusivity, and they're very grounded, very stable. They take their promises very seriously, and they're very much connected to Earth. Well, what I think is interesting is that all of those things were not part of just one planet. Some of those qualities came from one planet, and some of those qualities came from the other planet. And they combined, and when they combined, they created what we know today as the Polarians, which are the people that have all these qualities that merged two different type of people and became one. So, and honestly, I don't know if that was a long time or because I didn't get dates. I just saw the emergence of the two different type of people. Like at the beginning, the Polaris A, and I'm going to say Polaris A because I just got Polaris Planet 1 and Planet 2, so I don't know what it was. But Polaris A, the short, small people, they had big, they had a need for harmony, for unity, for community, for being very connected to their planet's Earth and cultivating and like having water and planting things, where the other people that were very much into developing governments, developing technologies, and advancing were completely different. And because they wanted to understand each other, they started intermingling. And that's when the third planet came about, where they actually combined everything they knew and advanced as one. Which is interesting because the way that they showed me that, it was actually quite interesting. So let me tell you, like, when I was going through the Akashic to get the information about the Polarians, I saw the 3 stars, similar to Hadar, but I saw Planet A, Planet B, and then the third planet later, where they show me how they merged together. And the short people were very much like native Indian mindset, where they work in small groups, they like small villages, they nurture their planet, they work together, they made decisions together. There was no competition. They seem to be very happy. It's a denser place than Earth. I felt really heavier there than here. So I know, but it's not because of dark entities. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the gravity of the planet is denser than here. So I felt heavier there than here. But it was a lot of mountains, a lot of trees and mountains and water. It was beautiful. On the other planet, the second planet, it was very high tech, high building, high science, a lot of diplomacy, there is no competition because everybody had a role. Everybody had different skills to put into practice. And because of that, there was no need to compete with anybody. It was just about sharing, learning, and improving and advancing. So when the two merged, the second planet wanted to know what is the whole unity thing about, and the other people wanted to know what else is out there. So it kind of makes sense that they merged, because they found, even though they had different wants and needs and desires, by uniting, they created something that took the best out of both, where there was no need for competition. And I also saw like people that had yellow, light blue, and not yellow, orangey, like light orangey red tones on their skin, something to do with an identifying system. So when people are born, they knew what the skills are. Almost like if they knew what skills they had, they can go and do the skills without having to compete for a specific task. So it was more like an identifying tool for them to know what they came to that moment to do, to that life when they incarnated there. So I thought that was really interesting. Let's see what else. The shore people had more emotions and a deeper connection to their planet, and they were very in tune to the planet. Very happy, very abundant in their own ways. They were like 4 feet tall beings, which I thought it was interesting. The other planet, they were taller beings, skinnier, taller beings, but they didn't really show a lot of emotions. So when they combine, they actually merge these two different qualities of the different planets to create the third, like almost like an advanced civilization of the Polaris A, Polaris AB into Polaris B. When the Polarians come to Earth, they do tend to be homesick for a place that has a lot of harmony, because they didn't have to compete for things. And they do tend to have a little bit of extra weight due to the fact that they don't feel like this place is very harmonious. There were fairy elementals, animals that I saw, even like bears and different type of animals that are probably now in the North Pole. Somehow they emit a frequency which goes from the North Pole area down to the rest of the planet here. And this frequency has healing energy that is infused even into the ice of the water in the North Pole. So bringing energy to the entire planet. There is some sort of way that they communicate from the beings that are actually in the North Pole, the animals, even the water is being infused with very intricate technology and the frequency of the animals too, in order to bring healing energy to the rest of the planet. The Polarians tend to have some group lessons. They do get stuck in jobs and relationships that are no longer serving them. They may be very attached to old beliefs and the way of doing things that do no longer serve them. And they do have issues with their weight, because again, this is not a very harmonious planet to be. So if they're not in a good family, if they don't have good friends, or if they're in an area where a lot of energy is always moving and it's chaotic, it can cause a lot of unbalance to them. They do tend to be harmonizers in general. And again, they're healers, but they don't heal directly. Like they tend to be more indirect in the way that they heal. They are very patient and tolerant, but obviously sometimes that's not a good thing, because they do get stuck in jobs and situations that no longer are for their highest good. And I think that's all I have on Polarians and Hadarians. So I'm going to leave it here for now. If I get anything else, I'll put it in the comments. But it was a very interesting session, and to see all the different visions and hear the things, it was actually pretty amazing. So I hope you like it, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.